Welcome to Miyconst Hardware. It's about time to make yet another AliExpress Offers update, but as always I need to start with my boring disclaimers and warnings. AliExpress is a lottery, it's not a safe place, and I cannot recommend you a single reliable and reputable AliExpress store. If you're buying anything from AliExpress, then please always remember to record unboxing video, take high-resolution pictures, and preferably also take screenshots of what exactly you are buying, so you will be able to prove your point later on. For me, it happened several times that I bought lots of different items from highly ranked stores on AliExpress, and one of them happened to be a complete crap. I open a dispute, I win the dispute, I send the item back, and after that the store completely blocks me, so I cannot buy anything more from that store. They also completely ignore all of my messages, so just be aware that all of them may end up trying to screw you up. It is also important to support your local business, so if you have an opportunity to buy something locally, even if it is a bit more expensive, please do so. I also highly encourage you to understand how the free shipping works and why it is possible to receive a package from China for free, while sending a simple envelope within your country costs you money.
Seriously, who exactly is buying all this junk?
The last boring topic I need to cover is the pricing information. In my previous video I decided to use the prices without VAT tax or the value added tax, and unfortunately many people do not understand how that works, so I received quite a few negative comments claiming that I provide false information because my prices do not correspond to the real AliExpress prices. So in this video I'm going to use prices of AliExpress items with the Swedish VAT tax, which is 25%, and with shipping to Sweden. So, for example, if an item costs 100 euros, Swedish VAT tax 25%, the final price will be 125. If your VAT tax is higher or lower than 25%, or you have a different taxation system, the price will be adjusted for you. If you don't like this scheme, I am sorry, I cannot fulfill everyone's pricing wishes, so please just go to the AliExpress link and see how much it's gonna cost for you. Okay, now let's start the actual coverage of the offers. So I have noticed that AliExpress has been extremely annoying lately, and first when I open an item it gives me one price, but then after a while, if it sees that I'm really interested in buying this item, it will automatically increase the price. That's why in my presentation that you can find on my blog with all the links and all the pricing, I have one prices, but then when I open AliExpress page, the price is already slightly higher. It's extremely annoying, but that's what I get for navigating through AliExpress back and forth while preparing this presentation. Unlike the previous times, I'm not going to start with the LGA X99 platform because it is aging rapidly and the prices aren't that great for the motherboards, plus the quality is questionable. So this time I'm going to start with the latest and greatest AMD AM5. And here we have a couple of few interesting options from AliExpress. First one is the obvious one, is the Ryzen 5 7500F. It's basically the same as Ryzen 5 7600 with the 6 cores, 12 threads, but 7500F does not have iGPU, so you need an external graphics card. On AliExpress, with the Swedish tax, they go for less than 160 euros, and if I compare it to more than 200 euros for 7600 in Sweden, this is a steal deal if you want to enter AM5 platform. The next interesting CPU I found, which is not that much more expensive, is, to much surprise, Ryzen 7 7700. This one already has 8 cores and it comes with an integrated GPU or iGPU, and on AliExpress you can buy one for less than 205 euros. I'm not sure how Chinese can sell this CPU so cheap, because here in Sweden, a 7700 Ryzen would cost you at least somewhere like 260–270 euros, so the price difference is rather substantial. Another interesting CPU, which is the cheapest of the cheapest one for the AM5 platform, and I would only recommend it if you have very restricted budget but you want to invest into the future platform such as AMD AM5. This is AMD Ryzen 8400F. This is Ryzen 5 8400F. So not only this CPU has reduced amount of cache, reduced amount of PCI Express lanes, does not have integrated graphics card, but it also does not have soldered heat spreader. And what that means that under the heat spreader of the CPU, we do not have solder, but we have thermal paste. And that means that the heat conductivity from the CPU die to the heat spreader is pretty bad. Technically, it is not going to overheat, it's going to stay within the operational range of its specification, but the temps might go pretty high, up to 100 degrees Celsius. The good thing though that it costs only 100 euros or just under that, so it is a good starting point if you have limited budget and want to jump onto the AM5 platform. Another potentially interesting CPU is Ryzen 5 8600G. Unlike Ryzen 7 7600, this one has a strong graphics card, but it has a reduced amount of cache and it has a reduced amount of PCI Express lanes. So it only makes sense if you actually want that stronger iGPU to assemble something like a mini computer with an APU. And for the price of 191.92 euros, it's not that big of a deal if you actually need a compact PC without a graphics card. Now let's talk about the motherboards. I have not yet tested a single AliExpress AM5 motherboard, so I can guarantee you absolutely nothing. My picks are based on my experience with the brand, with the store, and personally what I would be considering buying if I would be limited to AliExpress and if I would need an AM5 motherboard. So I picked 4 different options: Huanan-G B650M V Pro, and when I searched for it, it was just under 90 euros, but right now AliExpress is offering it to me for 96 euros, which is pretty annoying. But still, getting a B650 motherboard under 100 euros is about 30-40 euros cheaper than local offers here in Sweden. So the motherboard itself is pretty basic. It looks to have decent VRAM, but it has only 2 memory slots, only one PCI Express X16 slot, but additionally we have one PCI Express X4 and 2 M.2 slots. Here it's important to mention that even though the motherboard has an M.2 slot to install Wi-Fi Bluetooth cards, it actually comes without Wi-Fi and without Bluetooth, so if that's important for you, you would have to add a card yourself. On the back side, we sadly do not have USB Type-C, and we also do not have USB Type-C for the front panel, which is a big minus in my opinion. The next board comes from Maxoon, and it is called Maxoon B650M Wi-Fi. It is also available in white version called Wi-Fi Eyes. When I searched for the deals, Wi-Fi Eyes costed just 105 euros, and that was a steal deal. But right now AliExpress is selling them for 136 or almost 137 euros, which in my opinion is a bit too much, especially if you consider all the risks with AliExpress. But the black one, which is a bit cheaper at 120 euros, can still be considered. So this is basically almost identical motherboard to the Huanan Offers, but it comes from a bit more reputable brand, and I have mostly positive experience with Maxoon compared to very much negative experience with Huanan-G lately, so I would be much more confident buying Maxoon than Huanan-G. Unfortunately though, the Maxoon option does not have the second PCI Express X4 slot, it also comes with just one M.2 slot. On the contrary, we get the Wi-Fi card installed onto the motherboard, so at least some sort of a plus. So if you need Wi-Fi, this one has it pre-installed and pre-routed, and as far as I understand, the package comes with Wi-Fi antenna. We still do not have USB Type-C at the rear panel, and we still do not have USB Type-C connection for the front panel, which is also a big disadvantage in my opinion. Finally, the last interesting, according to me, AM5 motherboard on AliExpress right now is a Maxoon B580 ITX. This is a tiny, cutie looking motherboard, but it is a bit pricey. It cost about 170 euros, and when I searched for it first, it was just 160 euros. So AliExpress jacked up the price by about 10 euros. The motherboard is white with this kind of orange accent and black slots, so in my personal opinion it looks pretty nice. And it also has RGB headers. Over here we have another RGB header. It also comes with a USB Type-C connector for the front panel, and basically we have everything we would want from a mini ITX motherboard. Unfortunately, we still do not have USB Type-C on the back panel, but we have Wi-Fi. Is it worth it, €170? Well, if you really badly want a white mini ITX motherboard, then probably yes. In other cases, no, I don't think it is worth it. Many people recommend me to take a look and review this ThinUA Mini ITX motherboard, which is called B650i Night Devil. I'm not going to do that for two reasons. First, because I had some negative experience with the ThinUA motherboards on AM4 platform. Only after BIOS updates and only after several motherboard revisions, they became somehow stable and somehow usable. The first motherboards were pretty bad and I would not recommend buying them. So if you want a ThinUA AM5 motherboard, then I would suggest you to wait at least another half a year. And the second reason is the name. Yes, for some of you it may sound pretty silly, but with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I have enough evil in my life and I really don't feel like buying a Night Devil and having it at home. The next platform to cover is Intel LGA1700. Yes, we already have Intel LGA1851, but 1851 is basically irrelevant for gamers and 1700 is still pretty attractive. For the CPUs, we have the standard trio. Core i3-12100F for just €65, and this is a pretty capable quad-core CPU which performs somewhere between Ryzen 5 3600 and Ryzen 5 5600. Then we have a Core i5-12400, which is basically same as i3 but with the 6 cores, and here you would have to pay €122. If you can afford it, then I would say that i5-12400F is a much better option than i3, but i3 is also a decent starting point. And finally, we also have this a little bit unique CPU because it is only officially sold in China. This is i5-12490F. This one costs a bit more, it's 131 or €132, but what's important is that 12490F comes with extra cache. 12400F has only 18 megabytes of L3 cache, the 12490F comes with 20 megabytes of L3 cache, and these 2 extra megabytes of cache really helps in games, especially with those 1% low FPS. Is it worth it paying extra €10? Yeah, I would say yes. If you can afford it, then I would go with this one. Intel LGA1700 is a rather old platform by now, so we have lots of different motherboards on AliExpress, but I limited myself to just 5 options that I personally find to be the most interesting. Let's start with this typical Maxun B760M D4. So as you can guess from the name, the motherboard works with the DDR4 memory. It has B760 chipset, which means that 12th gen and 13th gen CPUs are supported out of the box, but for the 14th gen you would need a BIOS update. The motherboard comes with all the basic functionality, PCI Express X16, PCI Express X1, a couple of M.2 slots, but unfortunately, just like with other basic AliExpress motherboards, we do not have USB Type-C on the back panel, and we do not have USB Type-C for the front panel. For this motherboard, you would have to pay just under €110, including Swedish taxes and shipping. The next one is this one, also from Maxun, but this one is ITX and this one supports DDR5 memory. What is so interesting about it is that it costs about €136. It supports 14th, 13th and 12th gen CPUs out of the box. It has M.2 slot for a Wi-Fi card, but no Wi-Fi installed out of the box. And it has USB Type-C connector for the front panel, which I find to be a rather big plus. On the back side, unfortunately, we do not have USB Type-C, but we have 2 Ethernet adapters. I don't know why you would want that on a regular PC, but one is 1 gigabit Ethernet, another one is 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, so that's another plus. And for the price of €136, I think it's a very good deal if you actually need a mini ITX motherboard. The next one is probably the cheapest of them all, is Huananji H610MVH. This is a DDR4 motherboard. It doesn't even have VRM heatsinks, but it shall be just fine with the i5-12400 and 12490F. The motherboard is absolutely basic, nevertheless we get 2 M.2 slots. We also have an M.2 slot for Wi-Fi. So this is what you get for about 72 euros, which is good enough to start on the LGA1700 platform. Another slightly more expensive 100 option, this one for 93 euros, which is B760M D4A. This one seems to be very similar to the previous one, but we have got a PCI Express X4 slot, and additionally on the back side or the rear I/O we have got extra USB 3 ports. But what's more important is that VRM here comes with a decent heatsinks, and it shall be technically able to support CPUs such as i5-12600K. Finally, if you want something really cheap but you don't want to bother with 100, then take a look at this Soyo Classic H610MR motherboard. Just like the 100 alternative, this one is absolutely naked. Still, it comes with a tiny VRM heatsink, which I'm not sure if that's a plus or a minus, but it has a tiny heatsink, it has M.2 slot, just one unfortunately, PCI Express X16, X1, and no USB Type-C for the front or the rear panel. Final thing I need to warn you about is the engineering samples of 12th generation. These early samples do not have PCI Express lanes, and if you buy one of these CPUs from AliExpress, then your primary PCI Express slot and anything which is connected to the primary PCI Express lanes of the CPU will not work. It will still work as a CPU on certain motherboards with a certain BIOS, but you will have to install your graphics card into a PCI Express slot connected through the chipset, and that will reduce bandwidth and increase latency. So all in all, I strongly do not recommend buying these engineering samples of Intel 12th Gen CPUs. The next logical platform to cover is of course AMD AM4, and this one is even older than LGA1700, so we have even more offers. I tried to take as little as possible, but still I have got 5 CPUs and 5 motherboards to cover. Starting with the CPUs, we still have the cheapest of them all, Ryzen 5 3500X for just 51 euros. Would I buy this CPU for my personally? No, not really. I would go to Ryzen 5 3600, which is 62-63 euros, but if you have absolutely tight budget and you don't want to go the ancient X99 route, you want to pick something more modern like AM4, then Ryzen 5 3500X with just 6 cores and 6 threads for 51 euros could still be a decent option. Then Ryzen 5 3600 is basically the same as 3500X, but with 12 threads instead of 6 threads, and for this one you will have to pay about 62-63 years. 3600 is slightly faster than i3-12100 in some games and slightly slower in other games, so here you just pick what you prefer, AM4 or LGA1700. Ryzen 5 5600 for about 96-97 euros is also a very decent deal. This one performs close to Core i5-12400, especially if you use Core i5 with the DDR4 and no DDR5 memory. So it is slightly cheaper, but performance is pretty comparable. We still get only 6 cores and 12 threads though. If you want more cores and more threads, then Ryzen 7 5700X with 8 cores 16 threads for 122-123 euros is a decent option as well. This CPU might be a bit heavy on the VRM though, so I would not buy those cheapest naked AM4 motherboards if you plan to use an 8-core Ryzen. Finally, if you already have an AM4 motherboard and you want the ultimate gaming experience, then Ryzen 7 5700X3D for 203-204 euros is the best option you can go. In terms of motherboard, you can get yourself onto AM4 with this absolutely cheapest Soyo Classic B450M motherboard. This motherboard would cost you less than 60 euros if we count in Swedish 25% VAT and shipping. It is absolutely naked and absolutely basic. It doesn't have a VRM heatsink, only one PCI Express X16 slot, only 2 memory slots, no USB Type-C, and only one M.2 slot for SSDs. Still, it's good enough for something like Ryzen 5 36 and 5600. The next one in line is Maxun B550M for €95. Since this is a B550 chipset, we already have PCI Express 4.0 support if your CPU supports PCI Express 4.0. We also get two PCI Express X16 slots, but the second one is either X4 or X8, I don't quite remember. We also have an X1 slot for something like a network or Wi-Fi whatever adapter, and an M.2 slot. Unfortunately, we still get only two memory slots, and we still do not have any USB Type-C connectivity. Unfortunately, after some negative experience with the ThinUI AM4 motherboards, I could not trust those no-name AM4 boards from no-name manufacturers such as Huananji, Machinist, ThinUI, and so on. So for myself personally, I would rather pick a known brand used motherboard from AliExpress. I bought a couple of these in the past, and I was pretty satisfied. So the first one would be this ASRock B450M-AC. The motherboard comes with Wi-Fi, it has 4 memory slots, it has 2 PCI Express X16 slots, the second one is obviously X4 or X8, it has 2 AM.2 slots if I remember correctly. No, actually this one has only 1 AM.2 slot. We still do not have USB Type-C, nor for the rear panel, nor for the front panel, but the price is just €72, which I find to be pretty decent for this board. The other interesting one is this Mini ITX ASRock Fatality X470. So for Mini ITX AM4 motherboard, just €122 is pretty good. And this one is packed with basically everything you would want from a Mini ITX motherboard, except of a USB Type-C connectivity for the front panel. For the back panel, we have one USB Type-C port, which is more than none, but we still don't have one for the front panel. It also comes with Wi-Fi, so as I said, for €122, it's a pretty good deal. Finally, there is such an option. We have this white one, ASRock B550M Pro SE, and this one claims to be new and it costs just €110. Apart of the motherboard being white, I don't really see much concerns about it, so if you don't mind how the motherboard looks, or if you like how it looks, I find it to be a steal deal. It has 4 memory slots, B550 chipset, which means PCI Express 4.0, then we have 2 AM.2 slots, 2 PCI Express X16, but the second one I can see here it's just X4, 1 PCI Express X1 for expansion cards, and the rear I/O is pretty decent, even though we don't have USB Type-C. Final note I need to say about AM4 is that we have lots of different CPUs for this platform, and AMD may release a couple of new CPUs in the future as well, so it is very important to ask the seller to flash BIOS compatible with the CPU you plan to use, because if you don't have a CPU to start up the motherboard, you might not be able to use it with your CPU at all. And finding another CPU just to flush your motherboard's BIOS is really annoying. Now let's talk about the graphics cards on AliExpress. Well, unfortunately, AliExpress market for graphics cards is a complete disaster. Right now, I could not find anything I could recommend as a decent deal, but if you absolutely badly want a graphics card from AliExpress, then this would be my picks. So the first one would be this Soyo RX 580 8GB for €102, and when I searched for it, it was just €82, so just passed a couple of days and I'm coming back to the same page and AliExpress is jacking up the price from €82 to €102. And I have seen that the price been going up and up a couple euros every time I go back to this page in a few days. So the next one is potentially interesting option, and I would say much better value, is RX 5700 XT, also from Soyo. Sadly, it also comes with just 8 gigs of RAM, and it costs about €188. When I made the presentation, it was just €175, so again, AliExpress is rising up the prices when it thinks that I'm interested in this product. Apart of 5700X, you can also consider this 6600M 8GB. 6600M is technically a laptop GPU, but with the desktop cooler it performs identically to the standard RX 6600, which means performance is about the same as the 5700 XT, but the power consumption is significantly lower. So if you're willing to pay extra for that, right now AliExpress is asking me to pay about 203 euros. When I prepared the presentation, it was just 185 euros. Annoying? Yes. Can I do something about it? No. If you badly want an Nvidia GPU from AliExpress, then the options are even more limited. Only two options I found to be somehow acceptable are these MLLSE GTX 1070 for 160 euros and RTX 2060 Super for 220 euros. Let's see what they cost right now. So the 1070 went up in price to 163 euros. It is kinda decent, but I would not buy it for that money. And RTX 2060 Super actually went down in price a little bit, and right now it's 216 euros instead of 220 when I prepared their presentation. The 2060 Super is obviously faster than the 1070, but it still comes with just 8 GB of video memory, and even though it supports ray tracing, the performance of this graphics card is not enough to even bother about ray tracing. Finally, I need to warn you about gigantic GPU scams which are going on AliExpress lately due to the high demand for the graphics cards. So for example, these kind of advertisements where they push a website address into your face, assuming or hoping that you will go to that website and buy something from them, these are all GPU scammers. These are disgusting people and they will never ship you your GPU. One of such websites is this one, GPU Star, and as you can see, they even made a somehow decently looking website. They also have the cookie notification pop up. They are also trying to sell Nvidia Tesla enterprise grade GPUs because these are popular for AI workloads and other kind of productivity. But they are scammers. Please don't buy from these websites. Please don't buy from these AliExpress stores. Stay safe. If you see a GPU deal which is too good to be true, most likely it's a scam. Now let's cover what you've all been waiting for, Intel LGA 2011 version 3 platform. As I have already said at the beginning of the video, the platform is really aging, it is also lacking features such as TPM and Windows 11 support on most of the motherboards, so I recommend you looking at this platform only if you have a very limited budget and you need something really cheap and right now. There are tons of different Xeon E5 V3 V4 CPUs and tons of different Chinese X99 motherboards, but I have tried to scope in and just pick a few viable options according to me in April 2025. So from the CPUs I find E5-2697 V3 for just 15–16 euros to be a steal deal. This CPU is very decent, but it consumes a lot of power and requires Turbo Boost unlock to provide the best gaming performance. The other option I would consider is E5-2680 V4. It costs just a euro more, about 17 euros. It is a V4 CPU, which means you have DDR4 2400 support and you cannot unlock Turbo Boost. It means that 2680 V4 in games will be slightly slower than 2697 V3 with Turbo Boost unlock, but at the same time it will consume significantly less power and it does not require any Turbo Boost BIOS modifications. If you want slightly better gaming experience, then E5-2667 V4 for 30 euros and E5-2690 V4 for 37–38 euros would be my picks. Finally, if you want something even better, or if you already have an X99 motherboard and you want to upgrade and get like maybe one of the best CPUs, then I would go with the 2697 AV4 for about 65 euros. Here I need to warn you that 2697 AV4 is not the same as 2697 V4. 2697 V4 has a few extra cores, and that's why in games it does not clock as high as 2697 AV4, and the gaming performance is actually worse than 2697 AV4. For the motherboards, I have limited myself to just two options. First one is this Chiida X99H9S. This motherboard is minimal, but it has basically all you would wish from an X99 motherboard. Starting with the price, just 60 euros, we have quad memory channel support, we have TPM support, so you can install a proper TPM module and get Windows 11 support. The motherboard also comes with a decent BIOS out of the box, we have resizable bar, and we have RAM timings. CPU overclocking is not supported, but that's not a big deal in my opinion, because most of you will be using these motherboards with a Xeon CPU. It also comes with 4 USB 3 ports at the rear, unlike many of the budget motherboards that come with just 2. If you need more connectivity and you don't really care about TPM and Windows 11 compatibility, then Miyconst X99 MR9A is my pick. It costs just 57–58 euros, but it comes with much more PCI Express lanes routed, so you get 2 PCI Express X16, 1 X4, 2 AM.2 slots, and the same quad-channel memory configuration. The motherboard is also available in a Pro version, which is slightly more advanced, and the biggest difference is that it comes with the best VRAM and this plastic integrated I/O shield. The rest is almost identical, and the BIOS between these two motherboards is intercompatible. Here you need to be careful. Do not buy X99 MR9A H motherboard. The H motherboard looks very similar, but it uses mobile chipset, and it also uses pretty weak VRAM heatsink, and as far as I know, VRAM here is even worse than on the other motherboards. So I would strongly recommend you to stay away from the H motherboards from Miyconst. They do not have SATA 3, they do not have USB 3, they use mobile chipset, so the BIOS is not compatible between MR9A and MR9H. Just buy this MR9A Pro or MR9A, which might cost a bit more, but you will get a much better motherboard overall. The final X99 note goes to the dual socket motherboards. Please, please, please stop asking me about dual socket motherboards for best gaming performance. Dual socket motherboards are not for gaming, they are not for video rendering. Dual socket motherboards and dual socket solutions are only good for certain specific niche use cases. If you have such a use case and you're sure that you can properly utilize 2 CPUs at the same time and you badly need that, then do yourself a favor, go to eBay and pick up a used Dell T7810 or similar workstation, which will provide you stability, quality, and most of the desired features. These workstations on eBay right now can cost about 200 to 300 euros, and they come with a chassis, with a power supply, and sometimes with some basic CPUs and RAM. Of course, it is also viable to take a look at the single socket options such as the Dell 5810, not 7810, which are even cheaper, and sometimes you could find these with somehow decent Nvidia Quadro graphics cards for a decent amount of money. So if you don't want to go to AliExpress and buy Chinese X99 motherboards, keep hunting on eBay for Dell T5810 and HP Z440 workstations. These machines look ugly and some might think they are bad, but they are actually pretty decent, and you get a decent power supply so you can install a decent graphics card and enjoy gaming for very cheap. I have covered CPUs and motherboards for several different platforms. Now let's talk about memory. So for memory we have 3 types. DDR4 ECC registered memory for the X99 platform. Here I would strongly recommend to go for the cheapest memory you can find on AliExpress or eBay, but pick either Samsung or SK Hynix or Micron. I would avoid Chinese brands, but if that's not possible, then Clisre is something that I have some experience and they were pretty decent. For example, these Clisre modules you can buy a 16 gigs DDR4 2400 for 20 euros, but I would actually not buy 2400 because most of these modules are just rebranded and remarked 2133 memory ICs. Instead, I would just buy a 16 GB 2133 from Samsung or Micron and try to overclock it. If you're buying from Clisre, then yeah, you can buy 2400 and if it does not work at 2400, then you can complain to the Ali seller. For AMD AM4 and for LGA1700, you would need DDR4 non-ECC memory. For AMD AM4, I would suggest to go DDR4 3200, but ideally it would be DDR4 3600. And what I picked is this King Bank DDR4 3600, which is available for, let me see. Okay, so they sold out 8GB 3600 memory sticks, but we still have 16GB memory sticks. So 32 gigs DDR4 3600 with an XMP profile for about 63-64 euros. Is it cheap? No. Is it decent on AliExpress? Yes. Now, if you don't want 3600, then the 3200 is slightly cheaper. This one is just 54-55 euros. Again, is it cheap? No. Is it decent on AliExpress? Yes. And 3200 works for LGA1700 and AM4. But for AM4, as I just said, I would really go with the 3600. If you're willing to pay a little bit more for stability and brand, then I would go with the Kingston memory. I have assembled dozens of AMD and Intel CPUs with these Kingston Fury Beast memory sticks, and I am pretty happy with all of them. So for 32 gigs you would have to pay about 70 euros, and for 16 gigs you would have to pay about 50 euros or 40 euros, depends on what speed you want. Again, is it cheap? Absolutely not. Is it the best out of the branded memory on AliExpress? Yeah, probably yeah. DDR5 offers on AliExpress are pretty limited and not really decent, but these two configurations caught my attention. So we can have this King Bank 32 gigs of DDR5 6000 with XMP and AMD Expo profiles, 2 sticks 16GB each for about 84 euros. Is it expensive? Well, it's kind of the same price as in the Swedish local stores, but it's one of the best offers from AliExpress. Another potential candidate is this S-Guard DDR5, which is also DDR5 6000, also 2x16, but they are asking 115 euros. When I prepared the presentation, they were just 110 euros, now it's 115. If I would go for S-Guard or King Bank, I would definitely go with King Bank just because the price difference is so big. The final slide of my presentation is going to be about AMD EPYC and LGA3647 platforms. Both of these options are not good for gaming, and I strongly recommend you to stay away from these if you are a regular consumer. On the other hand, if you really know what you need the massive amount of PCI Express lanes, the huge amount of memory, then these might be some good options for you. Starting with LGA3647, I would first look at the Dell workstation, in particular the Dell 7820 and the 7920. These are dual CPU LGA3647, but they both are TDP limited, so the number of compatible CPUs is pretty low. Still, if you're not up to the highest single core performance and you don't want to install the most performant CPUs, these two options might be pretty interesting, and sometimes you can find them at a stellar deal. In terms of motherboards, if you want the best compatibility out of the box, then I would suggest you to take a look at the Intel motherboards, and in particular the S2600 ST, STB options. For example, like this one currently going on an auction with a dual Platinum 8160 from Hungary, and I don't know how high it will go at the auction, but I had such motherboard. It's a pretty decent one. It worked with the CL CPUs out of the box, and it has very good quality. If you need a single socket solution, then the Supermicro X11 SPI TF motherboards are currently hitting the second-hand market, and from United States they can be obtained for less than $300 or 300 euros. For example, this one over here is being sold for about 210 euros with a 30 euro shipping from United States. Is it a good deal? Very hard to say. If you badly need 3647 socket, probably yes, otherwise no. In terms of the CPUs, there are dirty cheap ones such as Xeon Gold 6138, which is still pretty decent for the price, 20 cores, 40 threads, and would work just fine in a Dell 7820. And then there are expensive ones. 6150 is a middle ground. It is about 100 euros, some between like 1600 euros. It has slightly higher TDP and also slightly higher boost clock than the 6138. The ultimate CPUs are the CL CPUs and R CPUs, but the R CPUs are extremely expensive, so the CL CPUs are the way to go, but these require BIOS modification on most of the motherboard. So for example, this 24-core, 3 GHz base clock frequency Platinum 8275CL would cost you about 350 euros, which is a lot for that kind of performance, but that's about what you get on LGA3647. I don't have much experience with LGA3647 platform, and with AMD EPYC I have basically no experience at all. Still, I find this AMD EPYC 7K62 with 48 cores to be rather interesting. It costs less than 300 euros, and it is supposed to work with most of the motherboards that support second generation of AMD EPYC CPUs, and it's supposed to be identical to the EPYC 7642. It's just an OEM version for China. Now, for the motherboards, you can of course go the safe route and pick up a Supermicro H11 or H12, but here you need to be very careful because the early versions of these motherboards, they require hardware modification to be able to work with the second and third gen EPYC CPUs. So when you're buying one, make sure that you're buying exactly what you want. And the price is also not that great. So this one you can see, it's a second revision, which is supposed to work with the second gen EPYC CPUs. And they are asking about $400 for this one. This is same motherboard, but a bit cheaper, about $360, still pretty expensive. Another alternative is to wait for my review of this Huananchi H12D8D AMD EPYC motherboard. Is it a decent motherboard? I have absolutely no idea, but looking at the specification, it seems to be pretty interesting. We have 4 full-sized PCI Express X16 slots, we have 3 M.2 slots, we have 8 memory slots and 8 memory channels, I assume 8 memory channels. Then we have this kind of DIMM slot to install optional BMC or board manager controller. And then we also have a rear I/O, which is good enough for workstation use. We have Ethernet. From what I know, these are 2.5 gigabit Ethernet adapters, and then we also have onboard audio. So this is supposed to be good enough for basic workstation. You don't need to add any extra expansion cards. If this motherboard is decent or not, only testing will tell. Right now it is traveling to me, and the review of course will be available on my channel. With this all covered, if you have managed to get to the end of the video, I have to say huge thank you for your support, huge thanks for watching and listening. I hope to see you in the next videos. Be safe on AliExpress, and bye for now.